2. It's estimated that the Melbourne area will grow from 5 to 8 million people in the next few decades. They need to live somewhere. Some will choose to live here in Moreland. It's a great place to live. Moreland Council knows the challenges and opportunities that this increase in population brings. With 43,000 more people living here by 2036, there are important things to consider, plan for and act on. Things like housing, transport, our open spaces, and managing the impacts of construction activity. 43,000 new people, or around 18,000 new households, means taller buildings or more buildings on existing blocks. This is not what many of us are used to, but lifestyles are changing and we need to adapt. We want to encourage these taller buildings to be located near public transport routes and where daily needs like shopping and community services are just a walk away. This way, more people won't mean lots more traffic and congestion. More flexible use of our industrial land can help too. Some land can change to accommodate new work and local jobs, and some can provide housing for more people. We're also looking at ways that some housing can remain more affordable. Council is actively buying property to improve and purchase new parks and open spaces for all residents to enjoy. This is about thoughtful planning for a great future for everyone. The things we love, the vibrant and thriving shopping areas, our great heritage areas, will still be here. But changes need to happen. We want to make sure that any development is of high quality and improves livability. So we're making decisions based on research, data, world's best practice and consultation with the community. Together, we can continue to make Moreland a great place to live for our long-term residents, our new arrivals, and for those who like to live here in the future. Moreland, one community, proudly diverse. Victoria's population is growing, and Moreland is growing too. It's estimated that the Melbourne area will grow from 5 to 8 million people in the next few decades. They need to live somewhere. Some will choose to live here in Moreland. It's a great place to live. Moreland Council knows the challenges and opportunities that this increase in population brings. With 43,000 more people living here by 2036, there are important things to consider, plan for and act on. Things like housing, transport, our open spaces, and managing the impacts of construction activity. 43,000 new people, or around 18,000 new households, means taller buildings or more buildings on existing blocks. This is not what many of us are used to, but lifestyles are changing and we need to adapt. We want to encourage these taller buildings to be located near public transport routes and where daily needs like shopping and community services are just a walk away. This way, more people won't mean lots more traffic and congestion. More flexible use of our industrial land can help too. Some land can change to accommodate new work and local jobs, and some can provide housing for more people. We're also looking at ways that some housing can remain more affordable. Council is actively buying property to improve and purchase new parks and open spaces for all residents to enjoy. This is about thoughtful planning for a great future for everyone. The things we love, the vibrant and thriving shopping areas, our great heritage areas, will still be here. But changes need to happen. We want to make sure that any development is of high quality and improves livability. So we're making decisions based on research, data, world's best practice and consultation with the community. Together, we can continue to make Moreland a great place to live for our long-term residents, our new arrivals, and for those who like to live here in the future. Moreland, one community, proudly diverse. Victoria's population is growing, and Moreland is growing too. It's estimated that the Melbourne area will grow from 5 to 8 million people in the next few decades. They need to live somewhere. Some will choose to live here in Moreland. It's a great place to live. Moreland Council knows the challenges and opportunities that this increase in population brings. With 43,000 more people living here by 2036, there are important things to consider, plan for and act on. Things like housing, transport, our open spaces and managing the impacts of construction activity. 43,000 new people, or around 18,000 new households, means taller buildings or more buildings on existing blocks. This is not what many of us are used to, but lifestyles are changing and we need to adapt. We want to encourage these taller buildings to be located near public transport routes and where daily needs like shopping and community services are just a walk away. This way, more people won't mean lots more traffic and congestion.
Gallery and to our viewers live streaming tonight's meeting. My name is Councillor Natalie Aboud and I am the chairperson of the Council meeting for Planning and Related Matters. It is my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's meeting. Our meeting is being held on the traditional country of the Wurundjeri people and I acknowledge them as the traditional owners. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and also to pay respects to elders from other communities who may be here today. I acknowledge that currently many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people call Moreland home. I also acknowledge that the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people never ceded sovereignty of their lands and have continuously cared for their country for over 60,000 years as the world's oldest living culture. Members of the gallery, please note this Planning and Related Matters meeting is being recorded and web streamed live to Council's website and Facebook. This recording will also be available as video on demand. Gallery attendees are advised that they will be recorded during the meeting. Councillors, just as a reminder that in line with the adopted councillor conduct principles as outlined in the Councillor Code of Conduct, councillors should ensure that they conduct themselves in the meeting with integrity, impartially exercise their responsibilities in the interest of the local community and not improperly seek to confer or advantage any person. This behaviour will support the principles for leadership and good governance that secures public confidence in the office of councillor. Members of the gallery, in the event of an emergency or disruption, we may be required to take action to ensure the safety of the attendees. Please follow the directions issued by council staff and security officers. Thank you for your understanding and cooperation. Councillors in attendance tonight are Councillor Anna-Olivia Carley-Hannon, Councillor Helen Davidson, hello. Councillor Jess Dorney, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Mark Riley, good evening. Councillor John Kavanagh, good evening. Councillor Dale Martin, hi. Councillor Lambros Tapanos, good evening. And Councillor Oscar Yildiz. I have heard from Councillor Bolton that she's on the way, she's just running late. Do I have any, officers in attendance tonight are the Acting Group Manager to my left of City Development, Mark Hughes. Hello. Unit Manager of Urban Planning, Narelle Jennings. Planning Team Coordinator, Darren Camilleri. Acting Planning Team Coordinator, Lachlan McGowan. Councillors, I have had an apology from Councillor Alia Farnley. So I'll just ask for...
I'd like to move the acceptance of that.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh, and Councillor Martin is seconding. All those approved? Against? Declare that carried. Thank you. So as there are no further apologies, I'll move on to the adoption of the minutes. Could I please have a motion for the adoption of the minutes of the meeting held on 23rd of January 2019? Councillor Riley. Seconded by Councillor Kavanagh. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Councillors, are there any interests or conflicts of interest to declare? No?
I just want to confirm something. I publicly had posted on social media that I would agree Northumberland Road and I won't be voting for it. I did that probably about 2-3 months ago, but I did delete that post. Just want to confirm with the officers whether I should be absent from the voting for that.
I think that it should be fine. Yep. Thank you for raising that, Councillor Yildiz. Okay. So, I wish to give an outline of how the Planning and Related Matters meeting will run this evening. Firstly, the relevant planner will introduce the report and officers' recommendations. Then I will give any objectors the opportunity to move to the lectern and make their submission. After this time, the applicant will be given an opportunity to speak. If you are making a submission, please clearly state your name and address for the record. You are then requested to present viewpoints clearly and concisely on why you support or oppose the planning application. Please do not repeat what earlier speakers have said and keep the discussion focused on relevant issues and points not previously raised. If you are opposed to the planning application, would you please inform the meeting why you are opposed and suggest an alternative approach which would satisfy your concerns. Please use this opportunity to focus on your concerns rather than matters of detail in the officer's report. Please note that there is a limit of 3 minutes for each speaker, but as chairperson, I reserve the right to increase or reduce the time available to any speaker. So we'll now move to the presentation of the reports. And the first report we have this evening is DCF 1119, 1 to 5 Western Street, Brunswick, planning application MPS 2018-518. And I'll move to the officers to present the report.
Thank you. Good evening all. This is a planning permit application at 1 to 5 Western Street in Brunswick. Broadly, the application is for a cinema, but I'll take you to the details shortly. Subject site is located next to the Brunswick Activity Centre, under the Moreland Industrial Land Strategy. The southern end of the site is in Category 1 area, core industry and employment areas. The northern portion of the site is in Category 2, which is employment areas. The subject site itself is Zone Industrial 3. Surrounding the site to the west and to the south is Commercial 1 zone. To the northeast, there's residential areas within the neighbourhood residential zone and mixed use zone in the red on the image there. This is an aerial photograph of the subject site. You'll see to the north, there's a car park, which is a council-owned car park. And you'll also be able to make out in that image to the south there is Berkeley Square. This is the existing building on the subject site. As seen from Western Street. And this is the view from Edward Street at the rear. So the proposals for a cinema includes a rooftop cinema with a total capacity of 1,123 seats. The hours of operation are 9 AM to midnight every day. There's a separate retail space fronting Edward Street. There's a number of external alterations to the existing building. You can see in this image here, there's some circular cutouts of windows. You can also see in this image the screen on the rooftop as well. And the proposal has 0 car parking. You can see here, this is an image of the proposed development on Edward Street. If you compare that to, I think, 2 slides earlier, you can see that the building is being brought was previously set back from Edward Street, now it's been brought to the street edge. In terms of consultation, Council sent out 694 letters, including 2 signs on each street frontage of the site, and also notices in 2 different local newspapers. 33 objections were received. The main issues were car parking, traffic, noise, and lack of loading facilities. Planning information and discussion meeting was held on the 21st of November 2018. Approximately 15 people attended. The main issues at that meeting were the loss of car parking, patron noise, the hours of operation, orientation of the rooftop cinema, and concern about the assumptions behind the traffic and acoustic reports. Following...
Sorry, I thought I turned it off.
It's happened to all of us, Michael, don't worry.
Following the bid, the applicant clarified a number of matters contained within the acoustic and traffic reports. The applicant has also agreed to a condition to enclose the rear of the rooftop bar. The key considerations for this application are whether the proposed cinema use is appropriate in this location, and for the reasons set out in the officer's report, being next to an activity centre, we believe this is going to contribute to the nighttime economy, and think this is an appropriate location for the cinema. In terms of car parking, the applicant has submitted a traffic engineering report. That includes a parking survey of available on-street and public car park parking spaces in the surrounding area. Officers are satisfied that there's sufficient parking in the surrounding area to accommodate the proposed use. On top of that, also there's local policy which encourages reduced parking provision in areas close to activity centres or inactivity centres as well as areas well serviced by public transport such as this one. Final key consideration relates to the noise impact from the cinema and from patrons as well. The applicant submitted an acoustic report. One of the recommendations in that acoustic report was that patrons on the rooftop cinema are to wear headphones to receive the audio from the movies. The report also set out a number of noise criteria for patron noise and demonstrates that those criteria can be met. The officer recommendation is that a notice of decision to grant a planning permit be issued. Key conditions include that the recommendations of the acoustic report be implemented, additional acoustic testing be required post commencement of the use, and that there be a public works plan to detail construction of bicycle parking proposed along the Western Street frontage. And on that issue of the bicycle parking in front of the subject site and the public works plan, there is an alternative officer recommendation being put up tonight. It amends recommended condition 3 to add in an extra paragraph in relation to the public work plan. That clarifies that the works are done to council satisfaction and at the cost of the landowner. Thank you.
Thank you, Lachlan. I'll now ask the gallery whether there are any objectors who would like to speak. Yep.
The testimony is
Yep.
outside.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Or, yep, sure, come forward. No, that's fine. Yep, all good. Only at home.
This won't take long. I'm Fiona O'Brien. I'm the Centre Manager at Berkeley Square. And the main objection, or the only objection really that we have to this proposal is the lack of car parking. Our main point is, despite the fact that the council encourages everybody to ride their bikes and to walk and catch public transport, we have a car park directly over the road from this proposed development with 650 car spaces in it. And to be honest, we just feel like it's implied that a lot of people that go to the cinema will just be parking in our car park. The issues we have with that is that we have commercial requirements or commercial arrangements with our tenants. They're long term. We need to provide car parking for customers. It doesn't finish at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Our retailers trade. We've got 3 retailers that trade through until midnight. So we have to honour that agreement all the way through until midnight. If we have to introduce a new management plan to that car park, then the concern that we have is, apart from the cost that the landlord is going to have to expend just to put a plan in place, there's actually going to be a phenomenal impact on our local community. And these are the people who are actually, the reality is they are using our car park when perhaps they shouldn't be, and things like that. And we've tended to turn a little bit of a blind eye because we know that we have a responsibility, I guess, in that space. And it really is a concern for us that if we actually start to control that car park the way a lot of other centres and a lot of other municipalities have been, then that is going to turn everybody away from that car park unless they're parking in our shopping centre. And I just ask that everybody just have a little bit of a think about the impact on the immediate community there and the cost that my client is going to have to pick up just to manage our own car park through no fault of our own. That's all.
Thank you, Fiona. Michael?
Sorry for the ring, bit of a family.
It's happened to every single one of us in our lives. Don't worry about it, Michael.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Michael Pettit, Unit 203, London 3, Dodge Street in Brunswick. And I'd like to say at the outset that the unusual fact about the 36 objectors is they all love the concept of a cinema. What we don't like is the consequences to the neighborhoods. I live in Dodge Street, which is adjacent to to unblock, you can see where the cinema would be. There were 30 car parking places there. I counted 20 little green stickers given out by this council that people live there. There are others who lived there since 2011 when they were ceasing to give out those, and they come home from work and they live there. They're going to be playing Ring Around the car park of people going to a cinema if this goes through without any adequate parking commitments by the cinema developers. Look, this is a developer. It's a cinema, but it's a developer. It's not an elite missionary institution. They want to make money. And the way they're going to make money and maximize their investment is to have all 346 statutory required car parks eliminated and spread their patrons across an area, which I can tell you because I've walked the streets down Charles, down Edward, down Weston, down Merri, and there are lots of people there with those little green stickers. And what they're going to be doing is they're going to be using a public asset, that is public space, to turn a profit. And fundamentally, that's wrong. They should be contributing. So I'm just going to go over some of the suggestions that these residents have been making, and I'll go with the first one, and I think it's so modest that the developer should accept it. That the developer provide 10% or 35 of the required 346 car parking spaces, which is a reduction of 90% or 311. Now, I don't know if this is a record reduction in Moreland, but I'd be surprised if anybody else has ever gotten 346 reduction in car parking spaces. But the applicant, the developer, happens to own the building next door, which is not part of this application. It's where there's a cafe. It's a warehouse with trucks in it. And that space, which the applicant owns, combined with the space on the opposite side where he has 8 car parking spaces, which he's going to donate to you councilors, find a place to park them too. And then he's graciously going to accept money from the taxpayers to take out 4 trader-used car parks on Weston Street. That makes a total of 359. That's a minus 13 requests for parking. And that's what he's seeking to do to maximize his profits. Good on him. In fact, I'd say, what a negotiator. Because the council's going to build those bicycle racks in perpetuity. The developer gets the benefits. He could easily set them into his development if he wanted to. You would think he'd be winning hearts and influencing people rather than getting it all. And that is what is happening here, councilors. He is getting it all, and you're giving it to him. And you should think about that. You should think about that seriously.
Sorry, Michael, I just realised I forgot to look at the clock and you're at 4 minutes. So just wrap it up a little bit if you would.
Yeah, all right. May I ask this, if I put this in writing, will people read it? Will they consider it, or are you making a decision tonight? Okay, Laura.
We've got quite a lot of correspondence from you. So
all right, I will just make a few other points. Maybe other people will bring up others. One final point, if I might. The developer owns the Lido in Hawthorne. Developer owns the Classic in Elstonwick. In the Lido, there are 4 major parking lots. They are 2.5, 3 of them are 2.5 times the size of the Edward Street car park. And what's its future? That's a question to consider.
Michael, I do need you to wrap up, because otherwise what I'm obliged to do is allow the applicant to talk for as long as they need. This is what I grapple with.
Well, I don't mind the applicant talking. Can I make the last point? What they've done at the Lido and what they've done at the Classic, the councils there have red stickers around those cinemas saying this is exclusively for resident parking. And they have adequate space there for car parking. This is not adequate. This is wrong. I hope this doesn't go through as it is. And if it does, they should screen as the first movie, La La Land. That would be a
Thank
good
you.
opening night.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. You guys want to work out who's coming up next and
You go
approach?
first.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Shabilia. I live in Vaughan Street. Look, I appreciate that everybody should exercise, and I look at the councillors, and the ones that I know will be pushing for minimum car parking are young and can do it. But as a married man who has a wife who's had a double knee replacement, she struggles to get to Berkeley Square from where we live to buy a litre of milk. Have consideration for people that do need cars, live in the area and need to park in the area. Now, as the gentleman before me said, this is a profit-making exercise by the developer, the same as Milu on the corner of Coco Jackson Lane, where the council in their wisdom has allowed their access to their car park in Coco Jackson Lane. Now, if somebody here on council could tell me how you could get out of Coco Jackson Lane into Lygon Street in the morning when it's peak hour, or back the other way at night, there is no thought given to what's been done. And we cop it because people look for places to park and it's a rat race.
So something in relation specifically to this application, John, or that's just your
places
example?
to park,
Yep.
and they'll extend down to Horn Street, to Allen Street, all the way down Edward Street to Lygon, wherever they can find.
So you're
It's
concerned?
2 hour parking, but nobody comes around to book them.
Okay. Thank you, John.
Okay, but think about it, you're all young and you could walk, but there's people that can't. And if you've got children, you can't put them on the back of the bike.
Thank you, John.
Good evening, my name's Dawn Waite. I'm in Glenline Road, Brunswick. The applicant quotes that there's 3 bus lines that will transport people east to west. I'd just like to say that route number 509 that goes Berkeley up to Hope Street only works Monday to Saturday and ceases at 2:20 p.m, not midnight, as the cinema is going to be open. The Glenline, and it doesn't work at all on Sunday. The Glenline Road 506 bus at Sydney Road, Monday to Friday, generally stops at 9:30, Saturday at 6:37, and no bus service on Sunday at all. So that means how customers to the cinema going east-west. The only bus that is fairly good is the 504 on the Brunswick Road, but even that ceases at 9:27 Monday to Friday, 9:50 on Saturday, and 9:50 on Sunday. I'd just like to say what the gentleman prior said. I don't want the sympathy vote, but I have, in the last 18 months, had breast cancer and a brain aneurysm, and I don't have a medical certificate for my car, but I need a definite car park in the shopping centre. I consider other people worse off than me, and I go up the back. If the cinema goes ahead, I can't park there. There is a fact, a statistic, that 1 in 8 women, young and old, get breast cancer, and it takes 18 months to get over it and 10 years of medication. So they need to only go to the shops once a week so they can visit all the heart specialists, all the other Herceptin treatments and everything like that. They can't be shopping every day with just a handful and walking home because the cinema, the car park at the shopping centre is full.
Thank you, Dawn. Come forward.
Hi, my name is Tamsin Wagner.
I'm an employee of Scribe Publications, which is the business that operates in the building adjacent to the site on the east side. We're a book publisher. I'm here representing my employer, Henry Rosenblum, who's overseas on business until 15th of March. He submitted an objection under the letterhead of Terrain Consulting originally, and as the councillors of South Ward are aware, because they visited on site, we have some specific concerns about the proposal, primarily to do with the overshadowing of our building and the solar panels. We've got a 21 kilowatt solar panel system, and I just wanted to bring it to the notice of the councillors that the applicant, represented by Mr. Hasey from Contour, is in discussions with my boss, Henry. Unfortunately, they've not been able to meet in person yet, but council officers have facilitated an initial meeting and discussions are ongoing.
Thank you. Come forth.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Longhouse. I live in Horn Street. There's a few points I'd like to raise. Apparently, on the report on page 9 of your report, you quote that there's no food retail or the exactly. Note 2. The permit is for the use of land, building, and does not constitute any authority to conduct a business requiring Health Food Act registration. Now, according to the Food Safety of Victoria and the Health Government, a cinema is classified as a Class 4 business, retail business, and is by law required to provide plans of where all the refrigeration, food and everything else is going to be before they commence. Now, second point, the noise study that was done. Apparently, I haven't looked at any plans, so I don't know where the heating, cooling and the ventilation systems are going to be, and that wasn't included in the report. The other things that weren't included in the report were staff. You've got to employ people that want to come to the business. That's going to be an increase of traffic that hasn't been included. And also, just to wrap it up very quickly, according to the Planning Commission of Victoria, it says likely car parking demand can be determined conducting surveys at an existing establishment, not the current one, of the same use with similar location and other circumstances to those of the proposal. That I haven't seen in the submission. Private land cannot be used in calculation surveys and studies. This is all according to the Planning Commission. This hasn't been included. The other thing that hasn't been included is disability parking. You're going to have a theatre there, and according to the disability law, you have to have parking in front of the access. Now, so far in Brunswick, in that area, there are 50 disabled people that I know offhand. I can give you all their details. And also, car parking accessible within 100 metres from a site is considered to be nearby for short stay users. Commercial development should avoid relying on residential streets for car parking unless this can be appropriately managed with signs or meters, and that residents' car parking needs can still be met.
Stephen, I just need you to...
That's it, that was the final thing.
Okay, thank you.
And my recommendation is, if you like to go ahead with it, make our parking permit parking. And that eliminates all our problems and your problems.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Mr Dolby?
Nick Dolby, Holbrook Crescent, West Brunswick. Though I used to live in Luscombe Street, not too far away from this location. In fact, it was the first house my family moved to in Brunswick. First cinema in Brunswick, 1909. It was an open-air cinema, just like the one on the roof. At one stage in Brunswick, from the 1930s to the 1980s, there were 6 cinemas in Brunswick. Not Moreland, Brunswick. We haven't had a cinema for many years now. They're proposing to build a cinema. Geez, I support it. Parking. Gosh, not having parking at a cinema in a commercial use zone opposite a major shopping centre which has a car park, which, by the way, because it's built on a rubbish tip, must be a car park for a few hundred years in time. A cinema being built in high-density, young, affluent, south central Brunswick, does it need car parking? Of all the locations outside of the CBD in Melbourne for a cinema without car parking, this is the number one. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, Mr Dolby. Are there any other gallery attendees who'd like to speak for or against this application? No, so what I'll do is I'll get the applicant to approach the podium and speak if that's what you'd like to do. Yeah, sorry, I meant before the applicant. Yeah, we've had both sides of the argument.
Thank you. My name is John Hasey from Contour Town Planners, and we are Vale Proprietary Limited's planning consultant who have been engaged to prepare and manage permit applications for the cinema at 125 Western Street in Brunswick. Verne is a company of Eddie Tamir. As some of you may know, Eddie owns and operates a number of independent cinemas in Melbourne, including the Lido in Hawthorn, the Classic in Elsternwick and the Cameo in Belgrave. Each of Eddie's cinemas plays a critical role in its local community. It's a place for local residents to meet, a place to socialise and a place for entertainment. And Eddie's vision for the Western Street Cinema is no different. It'll be a valuable addition to Brunswick and its residents. It'll also be a place to meet, a place to socialise and a place for entertainment. Eddie's broader consultant team has put together a permit application which is clearly worthy of planning approval. The proposal has been assessed and scrutinised in detail by the Council Planning Officers and its internal referral departments, including the Council's Traffic Engineering Department, who have assessed the proposed parking waiver, and Council officers have recommended approval to be granted. We support the recommendation, including all of the suggested conditions and the additional condition that was mentioned earlier in terms of the street works and the bicycle parking. And Eddie, of course, is happy to foot the bill for those. In going through the application, attending the consultation meeting with the objectors, and as identified in the planning officer's report, the key considerations for the application are the car parking waiver and the acoustic outcomes. And tonight here is Frank Batera from Merri-bek Consultants, and he's happy to answer any questions about the acoustics and the acoustic report that's been prepared by his company. So in terms of the car parking waiver, again, clearly worthy of planning approval and advances the policy aspirations of council as set out in the Moreland Integrated Transport Strategy, and I'd just like to focus on a couple of those policies within that strategy. Prioritise walking, cycling and public transport initiatives before car travel, lessen the reliance on cars and minimise growth in car traffic, be a leader in zero emission transport modes, discourage car use, discourage car use, reduce the time people spend travelling by encouraging more local trips, and genuinely integrate new developments with sustainable transport. All policy outcomes which the proposed car parking waiver and the proposal more generally achieves. Surely, councillors, if we are serious about implementing sustainable transport policies like your integrated transport strategy in activity centre locations that have excellent access to public transport, waivers like the one proposed by this application are exactly the types of parking waivers that should be supported. And it would also be remiss of me to reiterate that the car parking waiver A proposal has been independently assessed by Council's own traffic engineer and the waiver is supported. In response to the objection before from the representative at Berkeley Square, we make it crystal clear that our traffic surveys and the analysis that was undertaken by 1 Mile Grid makes no reliance on that car parking as car parking that would be used by cinema patrons or staff. And just in terms of the other key consideration, ARIP's prepared a detailed acoustic assessment that has been scrutinised again by the council, and as I said, Frank's happy to answer any questions.
If you could just start to wind up,
Yeah,
please.
that's all I've got to say. I'd just like to thank the council for their consideration of the application, and we look forward to the decision.
Thank you, John. Okay, so councillors, do you have any questions? Councillor Bolton? I'll just go around.
Yes, a couple of questions following on from a gentleman who spoke earlier. He had some questions about where will the heating and cooling systems be located, how many staff will be working on site, and when do they arrive and when do they exit the site, and disability parking.
So, in terms of the rooftop services, included. Do you mind if I show you this plan? I'll hold it up. Included on the.
I think the critical thing is going to be residents as well as councillors.
Part of the 360 degree. So on the roof plan, there is an area set aside for plants, and that's clearly described.
Can you sort of try and verbalise where it is so that people can know where it is?
Yeah, so I'll hold it up. So on the western side towards the southern edge, adjacent to the lane and to the west of the rooftop cinema is a plant area, and that's where all the rooftop services and the like would go. And that's been assessed by ARIP as part of its acoustic assessment.
So can I just point to this section here? Yeah, is that correct?
Yes.
And the screen, on the rooftop, the screen will be down this end of the building, is that correct?
Yes, so you see the yard seats.
Yes, there.
Yes.
That's okay. Sorry, close to the screen.
In terms of the question about the disabled parking, again, given there's no parking on site, there's no statutory requirement to provide the disabled parking. Any disabled parking or a person attending the site would need to rely on disabled parking on the surrounding street. In terms of where that is, I can't answer that.
Sorry, so I just wanted to clarify that the opportunity for questions from the gallery to the applicant is not now, but we can ask. So he just remarked that disabled parking would have to be relied upon, considering whatever's present in the street is the disabled parking that would be relied upon. And do any of the officers have information about what disabled parking exists in the street currently? And I understand I'm putting you on the spot, but maybe we could come back to that.
And there was the other question about how many staff and when they enter the site and when they leave the site, like the earliest opening for workers and the latest closing for workers.
Okay, so again, in terms of staff numbers, that will vary significantly across the day. I haven't got an answer in terms of the maximum number of staff. I haven't got an answer for that. But in terms of if that relates to a car parking consideration, that would be part of the overall assessment based on the car parking rates for cinema in the planning scheme. In terms of the times that they would arrive, that would be typically sort of half an hour before the cinema opens and half an hour after.
Is that all you have?
Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
Councillor Riley?
Yeah, thanks. Can you just clarify, please, what considerations you've taken with regard to the loss of sunlight and solar access for the property to your east? And there are no setbacks on Edward Street, so I'm just curious about what considerations have been given to that. I know the planning system doesn't require it because you're in a CZ3, but I'm still interested in your neighbourliness and your community credentials here. Yeah.
So in response to the objection from Scribe, I'm assuming that's the specific objection you're referring to. What has been done is there's been some shadow diagrams detailed further than the ones that were submitted originally that sets out each hour where the sun falls on those solar panels. We've had discussions with Tamsin within the last week. There's an undertaking to have a sit down with them and, if possible, to come up with a solution to potentially relocate them if that's possible, or come up with some other solution for that. My own view, and you may like to check with Tamsin, is that can be dealt with, I think, between the two parties. It doesn't need to be addressed as part of a condition or the approval. Eddie is the type of person who would be open to having a discussion with Scribe and working something out. It's, in our view, as you alluded to, not something we think we need to satisfy the planning requirements. As you'd be aware, the council structure plan is promoting buildings in the order of 6 stories on sites like this, and if those aspirations are to be fulfilled, clearly there's going to be, if there's a 6-story office building on our side instead of a 1.5-story cinema, the overshadowing is going to be a lot worse. So we maintain that we don't need to do it in terms of anything to satisfy the planning requirements, but there is a willingness to have a discussion with the owner of Scribe and to come up with a suitable arrangement.
Can I just follow up? Thank you. With respect to the setback, I know we can't require it. It's not something, your setback on Western Street is 0. You're going straight, I believe you're going, Edward Street rather, is going up to the footpath. So I'm just wondering what considerations, if any, were given around setting back, because they're set back, and I believe, and I haven't gone back to all the rules at the time, but part of the reason why they were set back is because they were required to have some certain car spaces and so on. So in a way, the planning system required something then, it may not require it now because you're in a CZ3 and so on. So there's some slightly different competing interests here. I'm just wondering if you can clarify whether you at all thought about setting it back. Normally setbacks for audience participation is that we would, if you, as you said, rightly, if we're going to the height, we would be able to negotiate potentially some setback, but I'm just wondering whether that was given any consideration, even though you're not going so high.
It was, and the consideration was to push out to the street. So the council structure plan is, well, at the time, was looking at a commercial 1 zone for the site, and traditionally on commercial 1 zone properties, in terms of activating the street and having an active street frontage to the edge, the policy aspirations are to build out to the street and activate that edge through whatever it is, glazing or the like. In terms of what that means with the recent changes under the commercial 3 zone, I would anticipate, and I don't know what's going on behind the scenes there with what the council's doing, but I would anticipate with a commercial 3 zone it would be a very similar policy aspiration to build out to the street.
Thank you. Any other, Councillor Tapanos?
Great. So you mentioned that your client also has the Classic, the Lido and Cameo.
Yep.
I was wondering, in those cinema complexes, are there any car parking that is provided?
So Lido, not on site, no. The Classic, there is 1 staff car parking space off Selbourne Street, but that's not accessible to the public. The Cameo, I don't believe that's the case.
So none in all of those. Interesting.
Thank you, Councillor Yildiz.
Can I ask, with those cinemas, how long have they been in operation for? Do you know, roughly?
Centuries.
Roughly. I think the Lido, that would be, it was an original theatre complex back in the day, and then stopped operating, and I hazard a guess, it might be 6 or 8 years since we were engaged to prepare that application. In terms of when it started, maybe in the last 5 or 6 years, at least. But again, no car parking, similar amount of patron numbers approved.
Thank you, John. So, Councillor Dornier.
I was just wondering if you'd be able to talk a little bit about sustainable transport. You talk about it being a leader, and you've got some really clear policy objectives around that, so broad brush visions, I guess. I was wondering if you can talk a little bit about some particular actions or what's within current green travel plans
So,
for other cinemas?
obviously, looking at walking, public transport access, you know, it's, that is what it is, and we rely on that.
Yep.
Bikes,
Particular initiative, like if there's any,
so-
apart from the physical.
Yeah, so with the bikes, there's a statutory requirement to provide 7 spaces, and we've got sort of 50 to 60, so that's obviously a good outcome. In terms of the other items that would be potentially required by a green travel plan, if that's required by a condition of permit, that would be no problems for Eddie. Things like providing Mikey cards for staff is something that, you know, wouldn't be a problem, and you know, other green travel plan initiatives, if that's what the council wants to see, we can provide a green travel plan as part of the condition of permit.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Bolton, then Councillor Yildiz.
Follow up. If one of the staff members finishing work half an hour after the cinema closes at 12:30 needs to catch a bus using their Mikey, what do they do? Given that the buses don't run then?
Yeah, so that obviously depends where they live and where they need to go, and they wouldn't be able to catch the bus if there wasn't one running.
So they wouldn't be allowed to work there?
No, that's not the case.
I think we've established the buses don't run, and that's a bit of a gotcha moment. Maybe they would catch a tram or an Uber or call their mum or their dad or their boyfriend or their sister. Councillor Yildiz.
One last question. I mean, if you look at the area where this proposal's being made at the moment, you've got High Point Shopping Centre, you've got Northlands, Crown Casino, and then south, I think the nearest one would be Craigieburn, maybe. Sorry, north, I should say. In terms of catchment area, it's a pretty big area, and I'm just thinking if the expectation is that everyone's going to take public transport or use alternative transport means of getting there, I was at Berkeley Square this afternoon at 4:30, and I was lucky to find a car park, and I went, yes, great. If you look at it, 1,100 people, 1,133 seating cinema in this area, I'm just thinking if you're expecting people to use public transport to get there, or even those alternative transport means, you're only appealing to the people that live in that geographical area. What about the people that live in Pascoe, Vale South? I'm not going to catch a tram, I'll be honest with you, to get to a movie with my kids. Why would I do that? So car parking is the key thing here, and I'm just wondering, why wouldn't a cinema with 1,133 people consider their own car park? It just doesn't, it baffles me, and I'm sitting here going, really? And I asked you those questions deliberately because I wanted to know what was going on with the other cinemas. Yeah. And you said that you don't have car parking there either. And I think Councillor Tapanos asked you that question. But yeah, I'm just thinking, you're expecting to make, the developers expecting to make money. I appreciate that. But how many times can you keep going back to the same cinema over and over again if it's appealing to those people that live in that catchment area only?
Yeah, and that's fine. Just in terms of the answer or the response to your initial point of view, the Nova's just down here. I don't know the detail of it. I hear there might be another proposal for one up in Coburg for a cinema. I don't know anything about that, but that is what it is. In terms of the second point, you know, if you, for example, someone who lives in Pascoe Vale or another area wants to go to the cinema, they don't have to go to the Western Street Cinema, and it might not be the case that they do go there because they can't get a car park. So they might go to High Point or wherever else. But what this cinema does is actually provides a facility for your residents who live in the area. We can walk there, we can ride a bike there, we can catch a tram there, we can get the train there. And surely for your residents, that's a good thing. Rather than someone who's not even in your council area who might need to drive to a cinema, and they can go to High Point if they want.
If there was parking, I'd be definitely supporting this 150.
Thank you, Councillor Yildiz. I'm just cognizant of the fact that the questions are kind of deteriorating into a bit of a dialogue. So if there's legitimate questions that need to be asked, Councillor Riley?
Yeah, can you just clarify? I know the parking and transport issues that are covered in the report speak to the classic cinema and the as a guide as to the number of patrons and the number of cars that might be expected in the area. So I'm just wondering if you could clarify. You've got capacity of 1,123. So just to give us a sense of how many people are expected, how many patrons would be expected over the course of a week or a night. And I know Saturday and Friday are obviously going to have much better, higher patronage, but just to give us some, what are you expecting at the start-up to be those sort of things? Obviously, over time, it's going to change. But.
Yeah, in terms of at different times of the day, at different days of the week, things fluctuate. You go down to the classic cinema on a weekday during the day and there's hardly any people in there. So it does fluctuate a lot. In terms of the analysis that was provided by 1 Mile Grid to the Council's traffic engineer in response to those concerns, the data that was provided actually, it didn't use the classic as a case study for the number of patrons that are going to be attending this. And I think that was a bit of a misconception through the planning assessment. But what it did is sort of pick up where the busy times would be, and that's reflective of what you might think, i.e. Friday, Saturday nights and on weekends.
Thank you. Okay, I think we might draw a line under the questions, and thank you. And I would like to have a motion from the council, if I may. Councillor Riley.
I'd like to move the officer recommendation as listed on the screen there with the additional point 3. I think that's how I express it at this point. If I have a seconder, I'll speak to him.
I have a seconder for Councillor Martin.
Thank you. This is a big application. Our city's undergoing great change, and this is highlighting that. And so I thank everybody for their participation and the questions and presentations tonight. Clearly there is some officers have gone to great lengths to try and address many of the residents' concerns, and I think most of those have been picked up in the report. And the fact that we're in a commercial zone 3 area, which abuts northern neighbourhood residential, mixed-use zone, commercial zone 1, creates quite a dilemma, or at least brings some of these hard things to rub against one another. I believe that we've gone the extra road in this case by sending out far more letters than we normally would in a planning application, because we know the impact that this is having. This is also addressing the need for business and commercial activity in our city, and that's a really important aspect of what we're trying to do with a livable city and a city that caters to all sorts of people that visit us and live in this city. So we're looking at employment opportunities, we're looking at social and cultural activities, and I have to say I'm a big cinema goer. Interestingly, we are in one of the biggest change periods of humanity at the moment, with the impact of the internet and the change in IT around people's viewing habits. You know about those, so I'm really fascinated that a company's coming along and saying, we want to build a cinema in your city, when in fact, hello, cinemas were going to be dying a couple of years ago, but go figure, they're still here. And I'm pleased about that because I enjoy them. I also am interested because they're right up against another industry that's actually suffering greatly at the moment, and that's the book industry. And as a librarian, that disturbs me. And but again, we've got this great book company, Scribe, that's actually surviving in difficult times. So go figure. Things change, but then sometimes they stay the same. Most of the arguments tonight I've heard are around car parking, and I understand the angst about that. I get that every other day as a councillor, and a call about car parking or someone wanting to have their fine removed, etc. So we live this all the time. However, I'm not interested in providing more car parks. I am interested in more people coming to our city, and we are going to have tens of thousands of coming here over the next couple of decades. But I'm also interested in having employment and other activities in and around Sydney Road, a key activity centre for our city. It's actually the spine of our city. And I want to see that happen. I don't want more people to come to this proposed cinema in cars. That's why I'm prepared to move zero car parking. I get this we're still having the debate. We're actually going through the Moreland Integrated Transport Strategy where we are working to reduce the impact of cars in terms of the population. In terms of the business activities and other activities in our city, I think this is a really important step that we actually go this road. I understand that the arguments about privatised transport and privatised industry taking advantage of public car spaces, but we've taken a stance. On August 2011, all residents prior to that time have on-street car parking rights. So the people who spoke about the car parking, you can come down and park anywhere in our city for 2 hours, and that's what's going to be planned in the new Moreland Integrated Transport Strategy. Free parking for 2 hours. We're not stopping you from doing your shopping or going to the doctor, or going to the cinema for that matter. I'm interested that people are up here actually arguing to get more cars in our city when cars are eating us. They're also a great cause of climate emissions, and we're in a climate emergency. I haven't heard that mentioned this evening, but I'm trying to do something about that as a councillor in our transport strategies, and in this application I'm more than happy to support this. There are many other issues raised, but I think I'll leave it at that and hope that there is some positive outcome for Scribe in terms of their solar access and sunlight, because I would have liked to have seen those negotiations, even though they're separate to this. I just want to put a plug in for that because I would like to see a really good community outcome for our other businesses in the street. Thanks.
Councillor Martin, as a seconder, would you like to speak to the application?
Sure. Hi everyone. Thank you to the residents for coming down and talking to us. I know it can be a little bit daunting, especially when you're speaking against what's written before you, so thank you for coming down. I think there are a lot of really good things about this application. You talk about the fact that they're actually reusing the existing building. It's going to be incorporated. We're currently having a lot of issues with waste right across Victoria, and so we're actually going to be reducing waste by keeping the building envelope. I think, when we're talking about why is the developer building this type of, cinema complex without any car parking, well, it's because it's successfully running this in, 3 or 4 other places in Victoria with zero car parks. So there's obviously a commercial incentive for them to open up in Brunswick. They've done their market research. I think for the residents that are concerned about this, what Councillor Riley was touching on, we are seeking to address this in our Moreland Integrated Transport Strategy. It's a huge piece of work. We've spent close to $500,000 on addressing a lot of these impacts. We're going to be debating it next month, and I really encourage anyone who hasn't read it to have a look at it, because it does talk about resident parking permits in this type of area. So I really encourage you to read that, because we're seeking to address many of these type of issues in there. This is the heart of public transport in our city. We have buses. Granted, we would love the state government to increase the frequency of them. We don't control that here in Moreland. But, you've got trams, you've got trains, you've got a really fantastic display of where we want to be as a city with so many bike parking. It is really fantastic. I think about the development as well. It's great to see that they're negotiating with the business next door, even though they don't have to. There is a situation that, state government puts up all these flashy things talking about protecting solar, but there isn't anything actually tangible that protects solar. So I think it's great that the businesses are talking to each other. I also think it's great that we've got large water tanks, the trees on the street are protected. And also it's great for arts in Moreland. I think it's really important to potentially for people who are young directors who are working in RMIT in close proximity to this, that there's a potential that they could actually create content in Brunswick and then have it shown in their hometown. And I think that's also really important.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Carly Hannon.
I also rise to support the officer recommendation. I actually think this is a really historic moment for Brunswick, and I'm really, really excited. So whilst I do thank all the residents for coming and voicing your concerns, I want to state the reasons why I think this is excellent. I grew up in Brunswick and I attended local cinemas on public transport, the Nova, the Westgarth, down at the Sun in Yarraville, and to this day have still been using public transport and Uber to get to these venues. With this one, my parents can walk there. I can get a tram there. All my friends actually, when I was at university, were living in the apartments around here. They'll all be able to just go from their apartments to the cinema and walk back home again. So the idea that there's not going to be a lot of people who can just use public transport, cycling and walking to use this cinema, I don't think is there. The other thing that we have to consider is that this is actually protecting one of our buildings, and it's really important to consider that when you build car parks, you can't just go building underground and ruining what we have as the fabric of our suburb in order to just create more and more density. At the end of the day, more car parks is not going to solve the problem. We actually have to reduce the amount of people using those cars. The other thing about it is that I do want to touch on the disability parking and to mention that we do have Edward Street car park. That is a council car park. We are talking about the integrated transport strategy, and I think we should continue to talk about accessible parking for people with disabilities and making sure that we still have ways that people can get there, and that we do have permit parking and protect residents' parking spots in their area as well. So you have raised some really legitimate points tonight, but I do think that this cinema will be a great success and a real exciting thing for Brunswick. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carly-Hannon. I should have asked, are there any councillors speaking against?
Yes. I'd like to speak against and foreshadow an alternative. If this motion to approve is not successful, I'd like to foreshadow a refusal to grant the planning permit be issued for the use and development of the land for a cinema, retail premises and reduction in car parking requirements to 0 at 105 Western Street, Brunswick, on the following grounds. The reduction of the car parking to 0 is inappropriate and will adversely affect the amenity of the locality, contrary to the purpose of clause 52.06 car parking of the Moreland Planning Scheme for the following reasons. The car parking demand generated by the proposal will unreasonably monopolise the nearby existing available on-street and public car parking to the detriment of the surrounding residents and businesses, and does not allow for the future growth and development of the nearby Brunswick Activity Centre.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. And would you like to speak to
I will.
the application?
And look, can I just say from the outset, I'm a moviegoer as well, and I have frequented those venues, the Lido in particular, to see the movies. And it would be fantastic to have a cinema in Brunswick. So I do want to see a cinema in Brunswick, just making that very clear, and I hope that the applicant can work with the community and councils to see that reality achieved. But we need to do that with some car parking. Although I don't drive myself, and I've lived in Brunswick my entire life, and I will be going to the cinema on public transport and walking. Not everyone will, and you can't tell me that 1,123 seats will be taken up by people who are all locals who have all gone there on public transport. A cinema is not just designed for young people in Brunswick, as one of the submitters said in the gallery. A cinema also needs to be designed for all of our community, and that includes people with disabilities, it includes young families who need to get there with a vehicle, and it includes everyone. So as a principle of inclusion, I think that we certainly need to provide disability parking bays on site, but I also like to think that there should be some other car parking requirements as well. This application under the Moreland Planning Scheme, which is what we should be deciding this application on, that is the document, that is the law we should be judging this on, requires 336 car parking spots, plus for the cinema, plus another 6 for the retail outlet. Now, I'm happy for a waiver, a very large waiver, 90% upwards of that, but I'm not happy for 100%, because I think it also sends the wrong message to everyone else in the area that you don't need to build car parking. We know it's cheaper if you don't. Don't build car parking and just let the surrounding community absorb the problem, and then you're just adding to congestion. And we know that our community tells us every day that they can't get a car park in these locations in our activity centres, and this is why, because we constantly approve massive waivers and 100% waivers. So I think it's a bad trend to go down. Yes, we should be granting some, particularly on excellent applications like this one, but not 100%. And certainly not ones that don't enable all of our community to access the cinema, like not having the disability parking base. So for those reasons and those reasons alone, I'm not supporting this application. And I will just want to, I do note that the applicant also owns the land next door. I think that if this application was withdrawn or refused today, perhaps another one can come forward where some car parking on the nearby land is achievable, and I'll be happy to support that.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. 4? Any argument?
An
for?
amendment.
Would you like to put your amendment, Councillor Bolton?
Yes, to for condition 1.1K be added to remove advertising signs from plans. Condition 15 be modified to require the rooftop cinema to close at 11 p.m. each day and restrict the rooftop cinema use to only between the 1st of November to the 31st of March. Condition 16 be added to require the rooftop bar to close at 10 p.m. each night, and condition 20 added to clarify that headphones must be used for rooftop cinema audio.
Satisfactory to the mover and seconder?
Not to me.
No.
Do you have a seconder, Councillor Bolton?
I'm happy to second.
Councillor Yildiz. Councillor Bolton, would you like to speak to the amendment, please?
Well, this is, I'll just speak very briefly. This amendment is designed to ameliorate some aspects of the cinema. It doesn't ameliorate all aspects of the cinema. And I also think it would be great having a cinema in Brunswick, but not a cinema at any cost. There are a lot of residents who do live nearby, some of whom may be shift workers. Obviously, people expect a certain level of activity and so forth to happen in their neighbourhood in a commercial precinct like this. But there are some important rights to balance up between residents and commercial businesses. And I think noise is obviously one of them. And so this, I'm putting this forward as sort of like a compromise to improve some amenity elements to do with mainly predominantly noise.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Yildiz, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Speak.
Yeah, we'll get back to that once. So anyone like to speak against the amendment?
Can I just ask a question on the amendment?
Yes, mate.
I know I'm probably being picky, but just condition 16 that requires the rooftop bar to close at 10 p.m. each night, shouldn't it be that that's the latest it can operate? Otherwise it appears as though it must open till 10 p.m.
Up to? Can you have up to?
Yeah.
Yes,
To-
I mean,
to-
it
for
could
it to
be,
close at
I'd be
10 p.m.
happy
at the
to,
latest.
Close by.
require the
Yeah, close by.
rooftop bar
Yeah, I know.
to
Close by 10.
by 10
Is that
p.m.
okay?
at night.
Just thought it might force them to open a rooftop bar if
Yeah.
they don't want to open it. So.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Are there any speakers who would like to speak against the amendment? Councillor Martin?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak against it. And the rationale for speaking against it is that the bulk of this is either already included in the substantive or is actually, I think, unreasonable. You're looking at the rooftop cinema to close. I think that's, it is actually forcing people that may be working during the week that might want to go to the movies. It's going to rule them out. So it's essentially, I think that's unreasonable, especially for some of the longer movies. And the fact that it has to be a particular time of year, I disagree with that. I think that if the movies over winter are actually, it gets dark earlier, so they probably can run earlier sessions, and they might do that to attract certain demographics. I think the issue with the rooftop bar, and I dare say that the issue is liquor and not actually selling popcorn. And I think that that'll be addressed in the liquor license application, which isn't included as part of this. I also think that the headphones was included as part of the acoustics, and also issues around noise is included in the SEP N2. So I don't believe that these are actually needed.
For the amendment? Okay, so I'll put the amendment to the vote. All those in favour of Councillor Bolton's amendment? Against? Declare the amendment lost and return to the substantive motion. And I can't remember. Oh, I was up to against the substantive motion. Councillor Gildies.
I just want to make a few comments. Brunswick is quite unique, and it's fantastic that you're bringing a great cinema. It will, I'm sure, be a great cinema. But and I'm sure a lot of the staff that are going to work at this cinema are going to be all local, so it's going to give some young people some opportunity to work, and or anyone else the opportunity to work at the cinema, which is great because no one's going to drive to the cinema. They're all going to walk there or catch public transport. Even if it's at 11 o'clock at night, I'm sure they'll find a way of getting home. The thing is, I've had a shop in a shopping centre at Westville, Doncaster, and the reason why I went there is because there was ample parking. We were there for 4 years, and a part of our lease was the fact that there was a lot of parking available to the customers to use the shopping centre. Edward Street car park takes about 60 cars. Northlands has 10 screens, and they've got 4,000 car parks dedicated to the customers that use that vicinity cinemas there. We need to reflect the views of the voters. They voted us in, and I'm just thinking a lot of the people that have property, homes in and around that area, when people can't find parking at Berkeley Square or Edward Street, where are they going to go? They're going to try and find parking in front of your home, and that's going to congest and make issues for you and your family and friends as well. I just think, and this is unique, Brunswick's unique. You can't compare Brunswick to any other municipality, I believe, because of the history of Brunswick. I feel really sorry for Fiona. She's got a massive challenge on board if this gets over. She's got a massive challenge for all those retailers that are in Berkeley Square to turn around to them and say, well, your customers are probably going to find it very difficult to find parking, and the turnover is going to be a massive issue. We're supporting one business coming in, but we're killing, I believe, at least 30, 40 other businesses. We need to stop living in La La Land and face the facts. This is reality. If we believe that in 25 years' time everyone's going to be riding push bikes and skateboards and using public transport, I can't see that happening, and I just think this is just unrealistic for this area. It's going to cause massive issues. As much as it's going to bring money into the area, no doubt about it, it's going to bring an interest, and there is no cinema within 10 kilometres of this area, this cinema proposal.
Sorry, there's one at back.
Sorry, thank you.
But a cinema at this capacity, I should say. So I'm not going to support it solely on the grounds that I don't think I think the parking issue's going to be massive, and council's not going to be able to deal with it, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Yildiz. Councillor Dorney.
I'd like to propose an amendment.
Sure. Lay it on us.
I don't have the words, which I apologise for, but just given that the proponent was amendable to a green travel plan within the permit application, I'm wondering if there's a way, if I could seek some advice from officers in adding a condition around green travel plan.
So I'll ask Mark Hughes to respond to that, please.
Sure. Okay. It might be best if we adjourn.
Yep.
If we want to talk about how a condition could be drafted. It's just a bit difficult to write it on the fly.
Mark. Apologies. Yep.
So I'll need a motion for an adjournment for 5 minutes to craft some words. Councillor Riley, Councillor Martin, all those in favour of a quick adjournment? Against? Declare that carried. Be back.
Victoria's population is growing, and Moreland is growing too. It's estimated that the Melbourne area will grow from 5 to 8 million people in the next few decades. They need to live somewhere. Some will choose to live here in Moreland. It's a great place to live. Moreland Council knows the challenges and opportunities that this increase in population brings. With 43,000 more people living here by 2036, there are important things to consider, plan for and act on. Things like housing, transport, our open spaces and managing the impacts of construction activity. 43,000 new people, or around 18,000 new households, means taller buildings or more buildings on existing blocks. This is not what many of us are used to. But lifestyles are changing and we need to adapt. We want to encourage these taller buildings to be located near public transport routes and where daily needs like shopping and community services are just a walk away. This way, more people won't mean lots more traffic and congestion. More flexible use of our industrial land can help too. Some land can change to accommodate new work and local jobs, and some can provide housing for more people. We are also looking at ways that some housing can remain more affordable. Council is actively buying property to improve and purchase new parks and open spaces for all residents to enjoy. This is about thoughtful planning for a great future for everyone. The things we love, the vibrant and thriving shopping areas, our great heritage areas will still be here. But changes need to happen. We want to make sure that any development is of high quality and improves livability. So we're making decisions based on research, data, world's best practice and consultation with the community. Together, we can continue to make Moreland a great place to live for our long-term residents, our new arrivals and for those who'd like to live here in the future. Moreland, one community, proudly diverse. Victoria's population is growing, and Moreland is growing too. It's estimated that the Melbourne area will grow from 5 to 8 million people in the next few decades. They need to live somewhere. Some will choose to live here in Moreland. It's a great place to live. Moreland Council knows the challenges and opportunities that this increase in population brings. With 43,000 more people living here by 2036, there are important things to consider, plan for and act on. Things like housing, transport, our open spaces and managing the impacts of construction activity. 43,000 new people, or around 18,000 new households, means taller buildings or more buildings on existing blocks. This is not what many of us are used to, but lifestyles are changing and we need to adapt. We want to encourage these taller buildings to be located near public transport routes and where daily needs like shopping and community services are just a walk away. This way, more people won't mean lots more traffic and congestion. More flexible use of our industrial land can help too. Some land can change to accommodate new work and local jobs, and some can provide housing for more people. We are also looking at ways that some housing can remain more affordable. Council is actively buying property to improve and purchase new parks and open spaces for all residents to enjoy. This is about thoughtful planning for a great future for everyone. The things we love, the vibrant and thriving shopping areas, our great heritage areas will still be here. But changes need to happen. We want to make sure that any development is of high quality and improves livability. So we're making decisions based on research, data, world's best practice and consultation with the community. Together, we can continue to make Moreland a great place to live for our long-term residents, our new arrivals and for those who'd like to live here in the future. Moreland, one community, proudly diverse. Victoria's population is growing, and Moreland is growing too. It's estimated that the Melbourne area will grow from 5 to 8 million people in the next few decades. They need to live somewhere. Some will choose to live here in Moreland. It's a great place to live. Moreland Council.
I'd like a motion now to reopen the meeting. Councillor Kavanagh, Councillor Davidson, all those in favour? Declare that carried. Thank you. So, Councillor Dorney, would you like to present your amendment, please?
So I'd like to propose an additional condition to the officer recommendations that, just pull up. So prior to the commencement of the development, a green travel plan must be submitted to and approved by the responsible authority. The green travel plan must set out measures for promoting and facilitating alternative transport modes for employees. Once approved, the green travel plan must be implemented to the satisfaction of the responsible authority.
And can I ask the mover and the seconder if that is acceptable?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so the amendment has been incorporated into the substantive motion. I've heard from councillors Riley, Martin, Yildiz, Tapanos, Carly Hannon. Sorry?
I'd like to speak in the overall resolution.
Yeah. Have I heard from you? Have I heard from you? Not as Helen. Okay. Councillor Bolton.
Oh, thank you. I would like to speak against this development, and I would not be speaking against this development if I didn't feel it was cynically using green arguments to justify creating sort of chaos in the street. You know, I mean, the applicant has quoted sections of the Moreland Integrated Transport Strategy. I am a big advocate, in particular, of public transport. Now, I would assume the cinema won't just be advertising to people who live within walking distance, and there will be a lot of people who will live within walking distance. But the fact that the cinema hours extend to midnight, and the applicant mentioned that one of the other cinemas in the chain doesn't have many customers during the daytime, indicates that most customers are there, most patrons in the evening, weekends, when people are not working or fewer people are working. But that is precisely when a lot of the buses don't run. The buses don't run. Okay, it's Sydney Road trams, great tram service during the day, but at night it goes down to half hourly or something. The buses simply don't run on Sundays or run to midnight. And unless the cinema was offering to provide a free community bus, like some, venues, other venues provide, then I think the reference to green arguments is quite cynical and is really just to justify the fact that they are trying to maximise profit out of the cinema by squeezing in extra screens and really using the public streets for their own private parking for the cinema. I just see it as very cynical, and I think this is not the way to remove cars from the road. I think the way to remove cars from the road is to provide adequate alternative public transport in addition to cycling and walking, and that's not what we have in this proposal. So I don't think that can be fixed by just waiving all car parking requirements. And as we've heard tonight, there are some people with particular circumstances, which means that they do need access to a car. I do want to see a move away from reliance on cars, but we need extensive public transport in order to achieve that. And just simply allowing developers to build developments without any car parking does not address that issue. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. So I'd like to speak in support of this proposal. I'd like to refute a couple of things that I've heard, which I believe is the nature of a debate. And so, first of all, I wanted to say that I don't think that car park waivers across the city are what has caused the city to become congested. I think the city's congested because the city is an awesome place to hang out and people from other parts of Melbourne realise that. I think that having a cinema in the suburb of Brunswick is good for the economy of Brunswick. I think that because I'm a restaurant owner and I know that people go to dinner and a movie in Carlton, and I hope that people go to dinner and a movie in Brunswick, and I hope they go to my restaurant for dinner and then they go and see a movie in Brunswick. I think that in terms of staff getting to work, none of our staff in Brunswick drive cars and park all day to come to work, so I'm confident about that. In terms of people travelling to see a movie in Brunswick, this is evolution. We have Uber, we have carpool, we have car share, we have trams, we have bikes. Until very recently, I have 3 small boys. We use our bikes now. Once I was elected to the mayoralty, I took an electric bike the technology for that bike has literally just arrived in time for me to say, I won't go with an SUV, I'll go with this electric bike, I'll set a precedent, I'll be a role model. We ride our bikes to school. We never rode our bikes before I got that bike. You can change your habits, and each of those 3 boys, I expect, won't own cars, and if they do, I can't see how they could get down Sydney Road, certainly on a Saturday, to park them in Brunswick at the cinema. If anyone's driven down Sydney Road, it's not because of waivers, it's because Sydney Road is a cool place to go and Brunswick is a cool place to hang out and everyone wants to be there. It's why the change is so hard to grapple with. In terms of reflecting the views of the people who elected us, Brunswick was 55% Greens vote when the council was voted in, and Brunswick has since, while other green electorates have gone away from being green, talking about Northcote, Brunswick has changed to green from being red. So I think it's not a viable argument to consider that. There are 4,000 car parks at Northland because there is big box development. There's a Target, there's a Kmart, there's Maya, there's a whole bunch of different businesses there that are why those cars are parking there. Movies are a great thing to go and do, and I completely support the idea of a cinema in Brunswick and the application, and I completely support the car parking waiver because we are managing growth and we need to do it without congestion, and if we provide car parks, we enable congestion. So I'm supporting it, and I'll stop talking. Any other councillors who'd like to speak to the application?
Just really quickly. I'd just like to, we make planning decisions on many factors. We look at, what the planning scheme is which the planners actually put forward recommendations, which is based on this planning scheme. I'll just read out that within the planning scheme, in relation to car parking, state government actually support reduced car parking in developments within close proximity to activity centres with excellent range to public transport options. We've said tonight, we've got 90 metres from trams, 2 trams on Sydney Road, 1 tram on Sydney Road. We've got more on Lygon Street. We're within 450 metres from a bus. We're right near Jewel Station. Our applicant has provided 59 bike spaces when state government is actually only mandating 7. I too was cynical about this development, thinking, are they just taking advantage of an activity centre? Maybe they are, but it's a change of the times. I don't think it's greenwashing. I think they've committed to a green travel plan. There's good ESD features. The fact that we've got a huge increase in bike parking. I really like the idea of adding diversity to the activities available in Brunswick of an evening. I think really good public surveillance into the night and real diversity of economy and different things for people to do other than, quite often going to a pub. I recognise the sensitive interface that exists here with residents, particularly those located very close to the development in and around Edward Street. I do think that the objections have been ameliorated, mitigated, or where not mitigated, I think I feel satisfied that they've been justified throughout traffic assessments and or planning scheme conditions. I could talk forever. I think also the noise, we can't actually, there's no standard around patron noise and measuring for that, but I think the application demonstrates really good sound acoustic intervention and looking at particularly making sure that it's in line with SEP 2N conditions. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Councillor Dorney. Councillor Kavanagh, do you wish to speak? Councillor Davidson, haven't heard from you. You're happy?
I'll just say something briefly, but it's just to really point to the report and just look at the facts. There's been a lot of talk about the future of our city, and that's wonderful, and I'm glad that we're all looking forward to where we are. But let's look at where we are now as well. We're in a city where car use is still valid and people are still driving a fair bit. So I'll turn to page 20. It says the parking survey, which was conducted by an independent group, shows that sufficient vacancies exist within the available parking spaces to accommodate expected parking demands generated by the site. Further, the parking survey shows the availability of parking in the surrounding area is greatest in the evening, which coincides with the period of peak demand generated by the proposal. We've had a lot of debate on this today, which is great. I think it's gone above and beyond what is actually necessary for a very good proposal that meets the demands of the city, that is an activity centre, close to public transport, and those are the main points that I'm focusing on, and it has the appropriate car parking in the surrounding area to meet those demands. So I'm satisfied beyond any doubt that the objectors' concerns have been met tonight, and I can stand here and say that I will be approving this application tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Davidson. Councillor Riley, would you like to close the debate?
Briefly, thank you. You really thank all the councillors and the community for their contribution to this tonight. I know not everyone will be happy, but will be able to live with the result if this gets through this evening. And I appreciate the rub that's coming in this city. We're going to get it more and more from here on in, and it's not something that I relish. It's something that we have to deal with. I just want to come back very briefly and touch on the fact that by providing fewer car parks, we are addressing the issue and we're using a lever that council has. Public transport, I couldn't agree with my colleague more than the fact that we have inadequate public transport. I've been campaigning on that for over 30 years. It's not just about bikes, although I have to correct the gentleman to say today I've passed two riders today. One had a child and the other one had two children on his bike. And it does happen. But there are other forms of transport as well. And I want to put a plug in for car share, where we're actually rolling out 25 new car share sites, which are going to be trialled for 2 years. This is in addition to, I forget how many we've got. We've already got some of the highest concentration of car share in the city. And I think we need to be sharing the road more, and that gives people an opportunity to be able to not have to buy a car, not have to pay all those costs to go with private transport, and it is a form of socialising transport, which I think should be supported. Some of the daytime averages for patronage, as according to the report, in the daytime, we're looking at a maximum of around 165 patrons during the day and around 224 at night. So it's not going to be a revolution. You're not going to have 1,100 people turn up every day at this site and all bring cars. We are trying to deal with this. We're trying to address the fact that we want to give people different opportunities to mix, mingle, and so on. I also want to address the fact that Berkeley Square is going to benefit from this. So Berkeley Square is going to benefit from this. If it's anything like any of the car parks I go to, cinemas that I go to, I only go to the car park to get to the cinema from the street, is that many of those cinemas actually offer discounts for their for the cinema patrons to get parking. They do that at Nova. So I would have thought there's Berkeley Square need to talk about the benefits they're going to get as well as the impacts they're going to have. Sorry, that's a fact, and you didn't address that, and it's really important. The other thing I just want to finish on is that the disability parking can be provided. We're already considering that and looking at it, and our city does a good job in that area. So I just want to give a plug for Uber and taxi and car share, and look forward to us seeing how we go with this tonight, because we could actually have a whole new business, new employment in our city.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Everyone has spoken, so I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Sorry. Against? Declare that carried.
We have that division, please.
Yep, certainly. So all those in favour again, please. Carly Hannon, Davidson, Dorney, Bailey, Abood, Kavanagh, Martin. And against? Bolton, Yildiz, Tapanos. So I'll now, what will I do? I will ask the officer to outline the next steps. And Lachlan, we had trouble hearing you before, please.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Apologies. The council has decided to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit for the proposal, subject to the conditions contained in the alternative motion. Following the issue of the notice of decision, both the applicant and all objective parties will receive a copy of the notice of decision to grant a planning permit. Objectors will have 28 days to appeal council's decision to the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal. In the event that no appeal is lodged at VCAT, a planning permit will be issued. If a permit is issued, the applicant has 60 days from the date of issue of the notice of decision to appeal any conditions on the permit.
Thank you. So the next item we have this evening is DCF 1019, 21, 23 and 25 Northumberland Road, Pascoe, Vale, planning application MPS 2018-471. Feel free to use your outside voice, Aaron. It's a quiet corner.
I don't think this is working.
Yep, you're good.
Send your karaoke on.
Thank you. So we're here for the application at 21, 23 and 25 Northumberland Road in Pascoe Vale. I just draw your attention to the top of the slide on the screen, the highlighted blue arrow, which shows that this proposal is currently before the tribunal, or VCAT. So the council today is making its position for that review rather than an actual decision on the planning permit application itself. The subject site's located in an area where increased housing density is encouraged, shown with the red arrow at the top of the screen, next to the Pascoe Vale train station. In terms of planning controls, it's located within a residential growth zone and it's covered by a design and development overlay, Schedule 24, which is neighbourhood centres. In terms of the site and surrounds, on the left-hand side you can see the site consists of 3 allotments that contain single-storey houses. In combination, it's approximately 2,400 square metres in size, and the site slopes significantly from Northumberland Road downwards. The photographs on the screen show the subject site on the top 3 photos, and then the bottom 3 photos on the screen show the surrounding area. This proposal is for a 7-storey development with 73 dwellings. There are 106 car spaces proposed in 2 levels of basement that are accessed from a car lift, or 2 car lifts I should say, from Northumberland Road, and there are 80 bicycle spaces proposed. Here is a section diagram that shows the proposal. On the right you can see the adjacent development that's constructed. But on the left is the actual proposal. So you can see right on the left-hand side is Northumberland Road, which presents typically as a 4-storey development, but because of the slope of the site and the construction of basement levels, it's actually a 7-storey proposal. The application was advertised and council received 76 objections. The key issues raised were non-compliance with the design development overlay, non-compliances with clause 58, which were apartments standards, a lack of setbacks to the rear boundary, lack of outlook, adverse amenity impacts, as well as overdevelopment and impacts on the neighbourhood character of the area. There were concerns about lack of car spaces for visitors, lack of landscaping and open space, and concerns about excessive traffic generation and road safety concerns. There was also issues about overlooking. The officer's report details the reasons why the officers are not supportive of the proposal, and on the screen are the key reasons why this is so. I will quickly go through each of those. The first is that the proposed building height does not meet the mandatory 13.5 metre and 4-storey height control for the design development overlay. That actually means that a permit can't be granted for a development of this height in council's interpretation of the how the controls are drafted. Second is that the extended built form across the site, the lack of setbacks and the design response is an inappropriate response to the context of the character of the area, particularly in relation to almost 60 metres of mass across Northumberland Road with very little articulation and break. Thirdly, that there's a lack of setbacks that will result in poor daylight to many of the apartments proposed, particularly the ones that are below ground level. And finally, the key concern is that the car lift will impact on traffic flow on Northumberland Road. What that means is that because the car lift actually takes a bit of time for each of the cars to go in and out, it is council view that there will be waiting and queuing on Northumberland Road as they wait for those car lifts to operate, and that will result in traffic concerns on Northumberland Road itself. There are other grounds of objection detailed in the officer's recommendation, however those are the key considerations. The officer's recommendation is that the position for VCAT be one of not support or refusal, and the key grounds being exceeds mandatory height, poor ESD, poor accessibility, poor response to character of the street, poor amenity for future occupants and traffic impacts. Just in terms of process, there was a VCAT compulsory conference held on 21st of February. There were, without prejudice, plans circulated at that meeting. Those plans don't necessarily address many of the officer concerns in the recommendation today, but the plans that we're looking at as part of this proposal is still the ones that were advertised to the community. The without prejudice plans haven't been formally circulated or substituted. The hearing date of 5th of April at VCAT to hear the merits of the proposal has been vacated, and a new hearing date for 12th of August has been scheduled. That's to allow time for the applicant to consider a new set of plans to be circulated by the 5th of April for consideration by the parties to the appeal and council. And a compulsory conference is set for, a date hasn't been specified yet, but it's between the 15th and 18th of April to see what the position is on those circulated plans, if they are provided. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any objectors or submitters who would like to speak? Yep.
Good evening, my name is Franca Cataldi. I'm a resident at number 1, Faulkner Road, Pascoe. I'm currently being sandwiched between the development at number 3, Faulkner Road, and the proposed at 25, Northumberland Road. My family home is being sandwiched by these two developments, and I would like the council to please consider the impact on my family home and local residents. I'll only speak in brief as we have other speakers here who will go into detail more about our objections. The car parking at the moment in the street is chronic. Currently, with development already in the area, cars are parked in the street. To show you the impact it's had on my family home, I've had come home to strange cars parked in my driveway. I leave a note and later they say, oh, we really didn't think anybody was home. I've also had cash incentives for my driveway so they can walk to the station as there's not enough parking at the station. Also, I'm also concerned about all these apartments overlooking into my private property, privacy issues. Another big concern is the social problem with non-permanent residents diminishes the community feel and neighbourhood safety. We've also noticed, I have also noticed an increase in rodent activity as the current development further up the road. Bins have been on the footpath for the last month as they cannot be collected, and there's been increased rodent activity because of that. The bus line, well, people rely on the bus line. There's a lot of school children who go to catch the train at Pascoe to go to various schools in Essendon and Strathmore. And the poor bus driver has all these obstacles of overcrowding cars parked in the street and often cannot park at the, with safety at the bus stop.
Thank you, Franca.
My name is Lisa O'Halloran. I'm at 32 Northumberland Road. I've actually lived in every single one of your wards and can truly say that Moreland is my home, Moreland is my life, and if you can say you can love a municipality, I love this one. Mark and I purchased our family home. Thank you, Councillor Davidson. I do note you're the only ward councillor that didn't bother to return phone
Okay,
calls or
if
emails.
you could
so
just
thank
talk
you.
to the application. Thank you.
Terrible attack to have, and
Well,
it's quite personal.
It's fair. Thank you, John, Dale and Oscar and the Mayor for your time. Look, what I'd like to say is that Mark and I purchased our home in December 2017, so we are new residents to Pascoe Vale, and we purchased it knowing that we lived adjacent a growth zone, but we referred to the planning scheme and noted that essentially we could accept 4 stories of development that met the vertical rhythm of the prevailing area, which is predominantly townhouse development. Instead, what we have been shown is an urban design outcome which is incredibly poor, and essentially a 60-metre long unarticulated box which has been plonked on the landscape with very, very little architectural merit. Massive traffic management issues, virtually by the fact that a car stacker needs 3 minutes in order to refresh. That means a street where you're driving downhill, you already get cars running up your backside. Now you're going to have 106 cars trying to get in a single entry and exit point. An acoustic report that tells us the car stack will be okay because in Bridge Road, Richmond, it doesn't cause acoustic impacts. Well, Bridge Road, Richmond is a Class 1 Vic Roads road and it's not Northumberland Road, Pascoe Vale, a council road of the City of Moreland. Waste management. The bins at 19 Northumberland Road, a development of, say, 19 townhouses. The bins have been out on the street for a month. I have emailed council about this and to date I have received no response. We are now being told that there will be private waste collection. The truck will idle in the street. It will be private collectors will pick up bins from the basement. They'll put it in the car stacker. It will come up for 3 minutes and then it will be pushed up the hill and it will be pushed into the garbage truck, and that will only take 5 minutes. It's not going to happen. It's going to congest an already narrow street. The street is so narrow that we actually don't have a nature strip. It's going to conflict with buses, it's going to conflict with car movements, and it is an inappropriate waste management response. Councillor Riley, I agree with you. We are in a climate emergency, but a climate emergency is more than a buzzword. There is absolutely no ESD leadership shown in this application, and the response from Moreland needs to be that the only type of development which is appropriate in Moreland is good development which shows leadership in the ESD space. The other issue we have in Pascoe Vale is one of building materials. Without any sort of drama, our suburb is going to burn down and cave in purely because half of the 130 townhouses which have been squeezed into this activity centre are constructed out of flammable cladding. Half of the retaining walls in an incredibly hilly neighbourhood activity centre are constructed from treated pine, which has a life of 10 years. I was sitting with Jeremy McLeod from Breathe Architecture, who worked on the Nightingale project, and I said, Jeremy, look at this. This is in my street. There is a 4-metre high pine retaining wall. And he just went, geez, what's going on?
I'll just have to get you to wrap it up,
The last thing I'd like to say is construction management plans. So there was a concrete pour happening Northumberland Road the other day, and the truck turned the corner from Faulkner Road into Northumberland, and I know that they did that because there's a 20-metre long trail of concrete that goes down the road. But when you ask the planning officers whether we can include a condition about a construction management plan, their response is Moreland doesn't do construction management plans. We leave that to local laws.
Thank you, Lisa. I need to get you to finish up now.
That's
Thank
fine.
you. Yep.
It's not working.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that'd like to speak to this application? Yes, a couple more. I'll get to you in a minute.
Anyway, I've been living there. I'm Renato Pedro.
Renato?
I've been living in number 28 Northumberland Road for 40 years. I'm absolutely shattered of what I've seen in Pascoe. I'm disgusted about wherever you turn, there's cars parked, buses coming down. We lost Pascoe. The value of Pascoe is gone. I feel like, these developers, they're bullying us. They're pushing us out. They don't want us there. But is there a solution to it? What rights have we got as a resident? Have we got any rights? Nothing whatsoever. It looks like everything is taken out by them because they got the money. We can't park that, even, my kids, they come there, park the car because my wife looks after the kids. And sometimes there's no parking at all. I mean, I'm only asking you to consider, the residents. We've been there for 40 years. We're part of it. Our heart is there. And what are you doing to us? What are you doing? Have you got a heart, to think and to say something about? Where's our value? 40 years I've been there and seeing a monstrosity like that. And if this goes through, they put me to sell as well. I mean, there's no words to describe. We went to the Big Cat last week, and just as well the Big Cat away with us. Yeah, we see they come up with alternative, or I think they come up with alternative plan. But you know, the money talks. So I'm asking you, how come? Because I've been there, you know, for weeks to distribute objection papers. Okay. You had this paper here. What did you do with it? With these objection papers? And thanks to Oscar that he supplied me with it, which I personally thank you. And what did you do with it? Did you sit on it? Just let it there for 60, 70 days? So we can, you're representing us, all of you. Remember that. You've been voted in by us, not by ghosts. Okay? So I expect you to do much more for the residents than what you do it now. Because our area has become Grower Street. Have you been in Grower Street? Just the one parallel to Northumberland Road. If you go there, you think you're bloody, New York. I've got nothing more to say, but I think put your mind or your heart with the neighbours.
Thank you, Renato.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Just got this guy first, and then you can go next.
Right, good evening, councillors. I'm Govindu Wickramanayake of number 1 Grove Street. As the previous speaker said, yes, there are quite a lot of developments on Grove Street as well, and it's pretty monstrous. I'm here to discuss the overdevelopment of 21, 23 and 25 Northumberland Road. It's the safety issues concerning the higher density and car overload on the streets. As a 14-year-old, I walked to Gavin Park with my little brother to play in the playground. Over the years, many apartments have been built, as you can see from Glover Street, and this is just massive, increasing the amount of people and cars in the area. Before, there was no need to look for cars, but now, as more and more cars are appearing, it's a massive safety concern for me and my little brother. We never know when a car might just come speeding down the hill and knock us both. Due to the bend and the steepness of the Northumberland Road, both affecting the view of the driver, and this car accident is highly probable. This is further worsened as Northumberland Road doesn't have any speed bumps from the development to Falcon Road intersection, further promoting the use of speeding. This development will bring another 100 plus cars from the 70 plus dwellings. This doesn't even include the visitors. This is severely compromising the safety of the local people, especially us children, us teenagers, who are just trying to go around, just walking, having some leisure time. How would you feel if you couldn't let your children just walk 5 minutes to a park because there's dangerous roads? How would you feel? Ultimately, the only solution is for Northumberland Road's development to reduce these amount of dwellings. Otherwise, this is just a massive chaos. Thank you.
Thank you, Govindu. If I had a 14-year-old who spoke publicly like that, I'd feel fantastic.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Linda. I live at number 71 Northumberland Road.
Did you say Linda?
Linda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Firstly, my son, whilst riding a bike down Northumberland Road, has been injured by careless actions of a developer, tradesperson leaving their car door open when my son was riding down, and he fell off and hurt himself terribly. We are huge bike riders. We love bike riding in this area. The intersection of Northumberland Road, Pascoe, Prospect Street and Faulkner Street has reduced visibility for traffic due to the angle of the intersecting streets and the steep rise of Northumberland Road at that point near the development that is proposed. This intersection is used by a large number of students travelling to a number of schools in the area, one being, which is in Northumberland Road, being Pascoe Vale Girls, and the other being Strathmore Secondary College. Some of these students are travelling on foot and by bicycle. The hundreds of local residents use this road and intersection area to access the local train station by foot. There are 2 large recreational parklands approximately 300 metres from this site. Families frequent this area throughout the day and the night. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Linda. Is anyone else keen to speak? Thank you. Yep.
Likewise, my name's Rob. I'm actually Linda's partner, so live at the same address. Just a few things that she didn't highlight is the fact that almost opposite this proposed development, there was a car accident approximately about 2 years ago. The car was actually rolled over on its roof and ended up in the front yard of a property on the opposite side. So the impacts upon the safety of residents, even whilst in their own homes or on their own properties, is going to increase by the amount of traffic you're proposing. The proposal of a lift, from my understanding of using elevators and so forth, these elevators are very temperamental items that can easily be dislodged and actually stop working quite frequently. It only takes a car to slightly nudge it, and that's it. And it's out of action. They've got there's no backup plan for those people that are going to be parked out in the street to be able to access their properties until that elevator is actually fixed. Another concern is you're promoting cycling throughout the area, and progressively as Northumberland Road has an increase in traffic, increase in the amount of cars that are parking there, I actually cycle to and from work on a regular basis. It's getting to a point where you actually avoid using Northumberland Road, even though I live on it. It's a terrible situation to fall into. The adjacent street, or the intersecting street of Prospect and Faulkner, is also used by cyclists who try to avoid using Gaffney Street, just due to the safety aspects of using Gaffney Street, coming down to the train lines and so forth, and also the large steep climb. Those people who are cycling through there are also going to be impacted by the increase in traffic that is there. The number of vehicles that have been struck within the vicinity of where this proposal is, that have been parked out in the streets, is increasing, I've noticed. Parked cars are just being hit. What's going to happen next? Children, elderly within the area. The other thing that needs to be also highlighted is, as opposed, also with the rubbish it's collection, is also that when you actually look at these properties that are adjacent, they're actually kind of piling up rubbish down the end of their driveways and on their property because they cannot have it collected. This is also evident by a property that's at the end of Northumberland Road, at the opposite end of Boundary Road, where there is consistently rubbish dumped out on the nature strips. I would expect that a property like this would have something very similar. You're talking congestion with the deliveries of the materials and during the construction periods, builders, tradesmen arriving at odd hours of the night, making huge amounts of noise, which we have had on a number of occasions, working on Saturdays and Sundays when there should be quiet times. Okay.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Peter from 30 Northumberland Road. Firstly, an increase in the number of residents and a number of cars is not mutually exclusive. You can't expect a reduction in car parking to not overflow onto the streets. And this is what's happening at the moment. With the new constructions that are going up, the number of cars that are on the street is increasing. It's a bus route, it's a thoroughfare. There's a lot of traffic going up and down that street. It's a quite suburban street that is now being, the nature of the street is being damaged by the amount of cars that are on either side of the road. It's causing a lot of problems. The other things that are covered already, like rubbish on the roads, I understand that it's a neighbourhood zone and you want to reduce the amount of cars and things like that on the road, but a fish and chip shop and a pizza shop is not going to satisfy residents around the area. It's not Brunswick. There's not a Coles that you can walk to. right? There's a local little shopping centre. There might be a train station, but who goes and catches the train, like to either Glenroy or somewhere else, or Newmarket or something, to go to Coles and bring their shopping on the train? It's not going to happen for that amount of residents. People will have cars so they can travel and do these types of things. So, just because you believe that it's close to public transport doesn't mean people are going to use it. I'm all for gentrification. I'm happy to see planning and development, but it has to be responsible. It has to take into account the social impacts. It has to take into account the people that are going to live in these places. We talk to residents that have moved into renting some of these apartments, and they're horrible. They're dog boxes. People don't want to stay in them. There's constantly people moving in and out of these places. So just because you build more density, it doesn't mean that density is actually fit for purpose. Okay, so it needs to be thought of like that. Don't just build stuff and then put the cart before the horse and just, build things and hope people are going to have somewhere nice to live. It doesn't work like that. It has to be thought through properly.
Thank you, Peter. Anybody else? Okay. Is there a representative of the applicant who wishes to speak? Okay, thank you. Do councillors have any questions? Well, the applicant's not here, so we can't ask questions of the applicant. I'll have a motion, if I may. Councillor Kavanagh and Councillor Martin.
I'd like to move the officer recommendation on page 35, 36, and I believe I have a seconder, so I'll speak to it. Firstly, can I apologise that this has been a drawn-out process, and in fact, I've been a party to that fact that it's been drawn out. I believe that for a long time, officers were going to refuse this application under delegation, but I called it up because I wanted the application to be heard in public, and I wanted it to be decided by councillors. And so that's part of the reason why the process has been a longer process. So in that respect, I apologise to you for that. And I'm disappointed that the applicant is not here because I wanted to speak, and I'm sure they're probably watching on the videotape anyway. So I'll be saying the same things as what I would have said if the applicant was here. Right? This can be a difficult job at times as a councillor on a planning committee. It's now called PALM, used to be called the Urban Planning Committee. I've been on and off for 15 years. This is not the case of being a difficult decision tonight. In my view, this is probably the easiest decision in the 15 years that I've been on this committee, because this application is not just marginally unacceptable, it is completely unacceptable. There are 8 points in the officer recommendation, and in fact in point 6 there are 11 sub-points. So basically it fails on so many matters, so many issues. The last gentleman to speak, spoke about the amenity of the actual, a potential residence. There'll be residents living subterranean in this application. We have been arguing for so long for mandatory height controls in many of our areas. We actually have it at this spot. This is a 13.5 metre mandatory height control. Mandatory, not discretionary. That means that it's probably a prohibited application because it exceeds that. The applicant has decided, if I dig low enough into the centre of the earth, then eventually it can just be 13.5 metres above what is the natural landfall. And so, therefore, people can live, if you like, in tunnels like they're in Cooper Pedy or something of that nature. This is just completely and utterly unacceptable. You look at the neighbourhood character. Yes, I know it's a residential growth zone, and I know some people are very unhappy, particularly in the streets that you mentioned before. But this is to another level beyond that. This is another level beyond that. And honestly, it is completely unacceptable. It will change so much. And so I say to the applicant, because I see the proposition of putting in amended plans, I say loud and clear to the applicant if he's watching, the amended plans better be drastically amended. If they're marginal changes, then I'm telling you now, I don't think this council will accept them at that point either, at the risk of predetermining my decision. But I'm just saying they have to be massive changes. They have to be significant changes. They have to be changes where not the front and centre is not only about profit, but it's about improving a neighbourhood character and improving an area. And that means massive changes to this particular application. And so, as I say, for me, this one is a very relatively easy one tonight. It requires refusal, and it requires council to use its resources to march with you at VCAT. I know there's been some talk about council not using VCAT or advocating strongly at VCAT. Can I tell you, in the 2017-18 financial year, council spent over $190,000 on its VCAT appeals. We take our VCAT appeals seriously, and we're winning a lot of them. We are winning a lot of them. Council's decision tonight, although it's what our position is at VCAT, it is very important, because it says, will our resources be used to march side by side with the residents, or will our resources be used to march with the applicant? So our decision tonight is an important one, even though it is not actually determining the application.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming. Again, I know how daunting it can be standing up there talking to a bunch of councillors, but I can tell you we're not experts in the planning space. Most of us are all residents as well, and we experience the same problems and issues and pressures that you're all feeling. And I think it's really important to know that a lot of the issues that you've raised tonight are solvable, and we are working on policies, or we have things in the process of ready for adoption in addressing a lot of these concerns. And I really do encourage you to actually come to us and have a conversation with us, especially those of us who have read the tens, I reckon there'd be 10,000 pages of policy document that we have in this city that some of us are actually across. And we can talk to you about every single element of all of these issues that you've raised tonight. So I really do encourage you to come and talk to us, because we can tell you what we're doing about all of these issues. We can tell you about what we're doing with waste, with car parking, with speeding, with transport, with building management. We can talk to all of these things. So I really do encourage you to talk to us despite this application. So I also would like to congratulate the owner and the architect of this, because this is the worst application I have ever had to sit through. And I am genuinely sorry that it has wasted all of your time, and it has actually wasted our time here at just the atrocious development that is sitting before us. And I can't agree with the officer recommendation more. This is a horrible, horrible application. It's not something at all that we want to see developed in our city, and there is a lot of work. And I really encourage them to maybe think about getting a whole new set of advisors and starting the whole process again, sitting down with our planners, going through the pre-application phase again. Last month, we passed what we called our Design Excellence Scorecard, and it basically steps out exactly the type of design and the excellence that we want to see built in this city. And that's available for developers to look at, to use. We've got design sheets, we've got all sorts of things in this city as tools that we're trying to encourage developers to use. And I really encourage the owner and the developer, if they're, or the architect, if they're sitting at home watching, please Google it, look it up on our website, and use those as the basis for any future development that you have in this city. And again, to any of the residents, please, if you have issues, don't wait 2 years for a planning application to come forward. Come and talk to us. We're councillors. That's what we're here for.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the officer recommendation? No? Unless anyone's dying to speak in... Yep, Councillor Yildiz.
Because I want to acknowledge you people, and we can say whatever we want, but it's all of you here, and I'll never forget the meeting where I think one of the residents opened his house, and we had, that was your house, 14-year-old young man, and I think there were close to maybe 30 people in that house, and you were nice enough on a Sunday afternoon open and offer refreshments as well. You guys are the ones that were the ones emailing us, and no doubt the councils are correct in what they're saying, that it's a grossly overdeveloped site application. But I'll never forget coming to your place at 11 o'clock at night to drop those objection forms in, because as much as we would like people to use the internet, some people wanted a hard copy. So good on you for doing that. 76 objections, and councils are right. This is probably one of the worst applications on council. But what would be good is to use this as an example of what goes on. I mean, this is one of the worst, but there are some others that are pretty bad in this city as well. But for other municipalities and or residents and councils to see what people are willing to put in front of us to actually, or think that it's going to get approved. I walk down Faulkner, Grover, Heath Street. I live in Eastgate Street, so I do frequent the pub, Pascoe pub, a fair bit. And recently I've deliberately walked down Northumberland Road up to Faulkner Street and walked up to the pub just to see how bad it would be if that was going to happen. And there's a lady that I spoke to earlier who said that now she's going to be jammed in, you're going to be jammed in between more development. Yeah, and the thing is, you bought your house 40 years ago, but there's people that bought their houses 50 years ago. I don't know what's going to happen if once this, I'm hoping VCAT will in fact disapprove the application, but what I'm fearing is what are they going to come back with? And the issue is we need to reflect what you guys want. You can say what you want about public transport. I'm a massive supporter of public transport, but we need to be realistic. You can't expect people to change their lives suddenly because we just want you to use public transport. We can't expect you to do that. My mum's not going to use public transport for everything. Yeah, she is for some things, but when it's wet, you can't use public transport. You can't jump on your bike. So, and again, I'm not anti-bike either, but we've got to be able to I think, respond to all our residents. And I just feel that not just this application, but there's other applications that are getting through as well. And it's you. You guys are the ones that are at VCAT at the moment. I want to thank in particular Lisa, who sends email after email after email, and it's because she's passionate. And I know that not all councillors can respond, but you know what? It's not about that. For me, it's about the fact that we've got a leader of the group who's willing to put her money where her mouth is and take time off work to go to VCAT and do a range of other things. But there are other people in this room that are doing the same thing. This is what People Power is about. So please continue doing what you're doing. And if they come back with another application, please take up Councillor Martin's offer. Come back to us and tell us why you don't want that application to go ahead either.
Thank you, Councillor Yildiz. No, sorry, we're not engaging in a dialogue with the gallery. So I'm going to put that to the vote now. All those in favour of the refusal, officer's recommendation, against, declare that carried unanimously.
Could I ask that be listed as unanimous?
Yep. So could we have that recorded as unanimous, please? I'll now ask the officer to outline the next steps.
Thank you. So the council has resolved to notify the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal that had it been in a position to determine the application, a notice of refusal to grant a planning permit would have been issued for the development in line with the officer's recommendation in the report. All objectors will receive a notice to this effect. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll now move to urgent business, and there are no urgent business items to conclude tonight. To consider tonight. So that concludes the business we have. Councillors, members of the gallery, and to our viewers live streaming at home, I declare the council meeting for planning and related matters closed at 8:45. Thank you very much.
Thank you.